It was a perfect night for camping. The sky was clear, the air crisp, and the stars glittered like diamonds. A group of friends, Sarah, Tom, Emma, and Mike, had decided to escape the hustle of city life and spend the weekend deep in the woods, far from civilization. They found the perfect spot near an old dilapidated cabin that had clearly seen better days. The cabin, with its broken windows and weathered wood, added a touch of eerie charm to their adventure. As night fell, they gathered around the campfire, the flames casting dancing shadows on the trees. They roasted marshmallows, laughed, and shared stories. Eventually, the conversation turned to ghost stories. Tom, the self-proclaimed storyteller of the group, started with a tale he'd heard about a haunted mansion in their hometown. The others listened intently, enjoying the shivers running down their spines. Tom began with an exaggeratedly spooky voice. "So, there was this old mansion, right? They say it was haunted by the ghost of a woman who died waiting for her lover to return from war. But he never came back. Probably got tired of waiting," Mike joked, trying to lighten the mood. Sarah rolled her eyes. "Come on, Mike. Let Tom finish." Tom continued. "Anyway, people say they see her wandering the halls waiting for him. One night, a group of kids decided to explore the mansion. They claimed they saw her standing at the window looking out. They ran out screaming and vowed never to go back." "Sounds like an old wives' tale," Emma said, though she couldn't hide the unease in her voice. After Tom finished, Sarah chimed in with a story she'd read online about a cursed graveyard. She leaned in, her voice low and serious. "There's this graveyard in the next town over. They say if you visit at midnight, you can see the spirits of the dead wandering around searching for their lost loved ones, but if you see them, you're cursed with bad luck for 7 years. 7 years? That's oddly specific," Mike remarked, chuckling nervously. "Yeah, well, my cousin went there once with his friends. They saw something, a figure in white just standing by a grave. They all swear they've had terrible luck ever since," Sarah replied, her expression serious. The wind picked up, rustling the leaves around them. The campfire flickered, casting eerie shadows on the surrounding trees. They laughed nervously, attributing the sudden chill to the cool night air. Emma, usually the skeptic, hesitated before speaking. "I have a story too, but it's not just a story. It happened to a friend of mine. She told me about this place, actually." "Oh, this should be good," Tom said, leaning forward. Emma glanced around, her voice barely above a whisper. "Apparently, a long time ago, there was a small settlement here. One night, something terrible happened. No one knows exactly what, but the whole settlement vanished. Some say they were cursed. Others think it was a tragic accident. But some believe that on nights like this, if you listen closely, you can still hear their voices." As Emma spoke, the night seemed to grow darker. The fire, though still burning, provided less warmth. The friends glanced at each other, a creeping unease settling in. Just as Emma finished her story, they heard it, a faint whisper, barely audible, carried on the wind. They froze, straining their ears. "Did you hear that?" Mike asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Probably just the wind," Tom suggested, though his voice lacked conviction. But then, the whisper came again, clearer this time. It sounded like singing, a soft, mournful melody that seemed to float through the air. The group fell silent, listening intently. The singing grew louder, more distinct. It was coming from the direction of the old cabin. "Should we go check it out?" Sarah asked, her voice shaky. "Are you kidding?" Mike replied, clearly spooked. "What if it's some weird forest ritual or something?" "Come on, we can't just ignore it," Emma insisted, standing up. "Let's at least see what's going on." Tom nodded, trying to muster courage. "All right, let's go, but stay together." They grabbed their flashlights and cautiously approached the cabin. The door creaked open, revealing a dusty, cobweb-filled interior. The singing was clearer now, unmistakably human but ethereal, like it was coming from another time. They stepped inside, the floorboards creaking underfoot. "Do you think it's someone playing a prank?" Tom whispered, scanning the room with his flashlight. "I don't think so," Emma murmured. "Listen, it's not just one voice, it's many." Suddenly, the singing stopped. The silence was deafening, pressing down on them. Then from the corner of the room a faint light flickered. They shone their flashlights in the direction of the light, revealing an old photograph lying on the ground. It was a black and white picture of a group of people, men, women, and children. dressed in old-fashioned clothing. Their faces were solemn, eyes staring directly at the camera. The same eyes that now seemed to follow the friends around the room. Emma picked up the photograph, her hands shaking. "These must be the settlers," she whispered, "the ones who disappeared." Tom leaned over her shoulder, peering at the photo. "They look so serious. It's like they knew something bad was going to happen," Mike, trying to keep his voice steady, added. "Or maybe they just didn't like getting their picture taken." Just then, the air grew cold, and the door slammed shut behind them. Panic set in as the room filled with the faint sound of whispers, echoing all around them. The friends backed into the center of the room, flashlights darting around wildly. The whispers turned into wails, and the temperature dropped even further. "What the hell is happening?" Mike shouted, his voice cracking with fear. "We need to get out of here," Sarah screamed, tugging at the door, but it wouldn't budge. "Calm down, everyone," Tom shouted, trying to maintain control. There has to be a logical explanation for this. But before anyone could respond, the wails ceased, replaced by a loud, anguished cry. The friends looked at each other, fear etched on their faces. The photograph in Emma's hand felt like ice. She dropped it, and as it hit the floor, the room was plunged into darkness. The only light came from their flashlights, which flickered ominously. In the dim light, shadows began to form, coalescing into figures. The friends watched in horror as ghostly apparitions materialized around them, the settlers, just as they appeared in the photograph. Their faces were twisted in sorrow and pain. The room was filled with a palpable sense of despair. Then, the apparitions spoke, their voices blending into a haunting chorus. "We are trapped, bound to this place. By the curse, you must help us, or suffer the same fate." "Did you hear that?" Sarah whispered, tears in her eyes. "They're asking for help." "How are we supposed to help ghosts?" Mike exclaimed, backing away from the apparitions. "We can't even help ourselves." "Maybe they need us to do something," Tom suggested, trying to think rationally despite the fear gnawing at him. "Maybe they need closure, or for us to find something." The apparitions continued. "The curse was cast by the betrayal of one of our own. The ritual must be undone." Emma, trying to make sense of it all, asked, "What ritual? How do we undo it?" The apparitions began to fade, their forms growing more translucent. In the woods, the old tree, the markings must be erased. Before the friends could ask more, the apparitions disappeared entirely, leaving behind only the oppressive darkness. The door suddenly flew open, and the friends bolted out of the cabin, not stopping until they reached the safety of their campfire. The fire had nearly burned out, but they quickly stoked it back to life, the flames providing a small comfort. They sat in silence, the weight of what they'd experienced settling in. They had encountered something beyond their understanding, a glimpse into a world beyond their own. As the first light of dawn broke, they packed up their belongings, preparing to leave the campsite. But the sense of unfinished business lingered. "We can't just leave them like that," Emma finally said, breaking the silence. "They asked for our help." "But what if we can't help them?" Mike replied, clearly shaken. "What if we make it worse?" Sarah looked around at her friends, then back towards the cabin. "They said something about an old tree and markings. Maybe if we find it, we can do something. It's worth a try, right?" Tom nodded. "We owe it to them. If there's even a chance we can help, we should." Reluctantly, Mike agreed, and the group set off into the woods, guided by the faint morning light. They walked in silence, each lost in thought. After some time, they found the tree. An ancient, gnarled oak, its trunk covered in strange symbols carved into the bark. "This has to be it," Tom said, inspecting the carvings. "But how do we erase them?" Emma, recalling something from a folklore book she'd read, said, "We need to scratch out the markings and scatter salt around the base. It's supposed to break curses." Sarah pulled out a pocket knife, and they began carefully scraping away the carvings. Mike, who had packed some salt for their meals, spread it around the tree. As they worked, a strong wind picked up, whipping through the branches. The air seemed to hum with energy. Once they finished, the wind stopped as abruptly as it had begun. The forest fell silent, a peaceful quiet settling over the area. The friends stood back, waiting, unsure of what to expect. Suddenly, a warm, golden light enveloped the tree. The friends shielded their eyes, but as the light faded, they saw the ghostly figures of the settlers standing before them, their expressions now peaceful and relieved. "Thank you." The apparitions spoke in unison, their voices soft and full of gratitude. "We are free." With those words, the settlers began to dissolve into the light, leaving behind a sense of calm. The forest seemed brighter, the air lighter. The friends stood there, taking in what had happened. They had done it, they had freed the trapped souls. The weight of the encounter lingered, but so did a sense of accomplishment. As they made their way back to the campsite, the sun was fully rising, casting a golden hue over the forest. They packed up their gear in silence, each lost in their thoughts. The ghostly campfire, once a source of warmth and light, had become a reminder of the chilling reality of the supernatural. They had encountered the souls of the lost settlers, trapped in an eternal limbo, and had helped them find peace. Before they left, Emma looked back at the old cabin one last time. "We did a good thing today," she said softly. The others nodded in agreement. They knew they had been touched by something unexplainable, and it had changed them. As they drove away from the campsite, they left behind more than just memories. They left behind a piece of their disbelief, replaced by a deeper understanding of the mysteries that lay hidden in the world. And while they vowed never to speak of that night again, they knew they would never forget the ghostly campfire and the spirits they had set free.